Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you might be in this fine world. You are listening to the Startup Selling Show, Talking Sales with Scott St. Bucci. That's me. Today's episode is a guest episode, and today's guest is Ethan Beute. Ethan is the chief evangelist at BombBomb. He is also the author of a Wall Street Journal bestselling book called Human-Centered Communication, and also a second book called Rehumanize Your Business. He also is the host of the Computer Experience podcast. Over the last decade, Ethan spent all of his time helping business professionals to be more personal and human through simple video messages. He has personally sent, as I read this, I can't believe this number, he has personally sent more than 12,000 videos, 12,000 personal videos himself. He spent dozens of years leading marketing teams inside local television stations in Chicago, Grand Rapids, and Colorado Springs. And he's also the husband and father, lives in Colorado Springs, California. I absolutely love Ethan and the work that he's doing. I got to know Ethan for the last couple of years. This is his second time on the Startup Selling Show. The reason I wanted to have him on the show is because of his recent book, the first book I mentioned, Human-Centered Communication. Much of what we talked about here with Ethan in this interview really focuses on what does it mean to really rehumanize the experience of our communication? How do we become really human-centered? Over the last couple of years, as we all know, so much of our communication has become digital. It's become through Zoom, it's come through email, it's come through all kinds of different ways. And the challenge that a lot of us have is like, how do we create a personal connection with people? And that's what Ethan is so good at doing. And that's what BombBomb enables their customers to do. So in our conversation with Ethan, we talk about this concept of digital pollution. We talk about what he calls his platinum rule, which you'll have to listen to hear what that exactly means. And really, what are some of the mistakes that people make when they think about video, and what are the opportunities that all of us have when it comes to using video as a means to connect and rehumanize our conversations with our prospects, our investors, our team, and even our own family. So I really enjoyed the conversation with Ethan. He's one of those guys that once you wind him up, you can just let him go. And he is full of energy and insight. And I'm so excited to have had him back on the show. So without any further ado, let's head over to my conversation with Ethan Beute. So I'd love to just dive right into a little bit about the book and talk about human-centered communication. And if our conversation goes in different directions and other rabbit holes, that's totally cool too.
Cool.
I feel like your domain expertise is around this right now. So I'd love to take full advantage of that time if we may.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said in that email, I'll follow your lead. I'll talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Cool. I appreciate that. My first question I wanted to ask you, looking at almost a time series of you and the work you've been doing at BombBomb over the years, and then being the chief evangelist there. And now it's almost this evolution of thought I can perceive in your situation. And I don't know if it's true or not, but you went from product to evangelism to now like stripping away. It's not even about BombBomb as a product. It's just like, how are we talking to people? So is that is that like a true perception? Is that perception real? And that you've, over the years, because of where you are and what you do, you've been able to evolve and build on this thinking process?
Yeah, it's a really interesting observation. I think there are probably some threads that run all the way through that connect all the way back to the beginning. Like I was the first and only marketer here for a couple of years. And so a lot of that early days was who's finding us? How are they finding us? How are they using us? And it's to your point, it was product related, but really it was like, is what we're doing in their day to day, is it additive? Does it replace something else? Why does it work so well? Who buys it and uses it a lot? Who buys it and doesn't use it? They maybe use it occasionally. Who buys it, doesn't use it, and cancels? All that stuff was, it really laid the foundation for certainly the first book, which was Rehumanize Your Business, which is kind of like the what, why, who, when, and how of video, email, and video messaging. But I'd say two things happened that really, really support your observation very well. The first is that a few years ago, I started hosting a podcast on customer experience. And that certainly dramatically changed my thinking, or improved it or refined it, all the things that happen, as you well know from hosting this show.
Yeah.
Like get to talk to a bunch of like really smart, interesting, engaged, passionate people, and you're just not the same person. And so, I started to see whether we talked about video or not in the conversations, I started to see different fits and different motivations. And, where does this fit into, where does video, email, and video messaging fit into the conversation overall? What is good about a human moment in an otherwise digital experience? How do we balance tech touch, human touch, all these things that constantly come up, the relationship between employee experience and customer experience, and how are we communicating with our team members and coaching and developing them? And what role does video messaging play in there? All these things we're connecting. And then with regard to this book, Human-Centered Communication, another factor that happened, you won't read the word COVID or pandemic in the book, but certainly we wrote it in partly in light of that, which was, okay, so everyone's turning their cameras on now, or a lot of people are. Shockingly, there are still people who aren't. I might tell you the story of a 6-figure sales pitch that I sat in on, and the two guys on the other side just didn't turn their cameras on. I'm like, it's so weird. Anyway, most people are comfortable doing it. And certainly there was more traction behind video, email, and video messaging. But what we were observing is that a lot of people are using it as kind of a shallow parlor trick, an attention getting scheme. And it threatens to derail the entire movement if people's first impression of receiving a video message is just crappy video prospecting. It also, turning the camera on, whether it's live or recorded, just isn't enough. And so Steve, my longtime friend and team member and co-author on both books, was like, hey, we need to do a book about how to be more present in video and in digital communication in general for the benefit of other people. And so we roped in a bunch of people that we might wind up talking about here in this conversation to help inform it strategically and tactically, in addition to putting our own wrapper of our own experience and observations on it. And so I do like your observation of kind of the growth and progression of the conversation we're trying to have. And certainly human-centered communication broadens the tent, invites more people in. And we found a lot of kinship and shared values around this. And sometimes those conversations go to, BombBomb or video messages in general. Sometimes they don't, but it's all a healthy conversation.
Well, there's a couple of follow-up questions I guess I have on that, Ethan. So one is, I'd be curious to hear if you have any knowledge or insight around trend of video usage since this almost structural break in the data when you have COVID and pandemic in March of 2020, because I've assumed there's obviously a rapid, rise in video. I'm curious to know if we're regressing back to mean in some ways. So that's a question that I have. And a second question I have is more around this notion that even those that may be using video or are using video, salespeople have this knack for bastardizing good technology. We did that with email. And it's oh, we have email. Great. I'm going to blast a bunch of emails out. We do that with social media on LinkedIn. We do I'm just going to blast DMs to people. And now it's okay, I'm going to use video and I'm just going to do some kitschy, parlor trick to try to get somebody's attention. Hey, this is me. Do you want a meeting? So those are the two follow-up questions I have. You can take them in any order that you like.
Yeah, I'll go in order that you offer them. I don't have data specifically. In general, what I would say is yes, the pandemic, for us, especially the bigger deals that were in our pipeline, we'll sell one account to one person. Some of our largest accounts have, several thousand seats with us. And certainly in the bigger deals that are obviously slower, there's a lot more red tape in general. We always need to have one more meeting. Someone else needs to say, all the things that anyone selling up market is experienced on a regular basis. As soon as the pandemic hit, all that stuff went away. It's we don't need to actually get that person's approval. This red tape, let's just take that down and let's get this deal done right away. And the interesting thing to me is someone who believes that almost anyone working in a professional capacity can and should be mixing some video messages in with their typed out emails, text messages, Slack messages, phone calls, Zoom calls, in-person meetings, et cetera. It belongs in the mix, period. I was at least excited that it motivated people to kind of fill in the gaps a little bit. But to your observation, I'm sorry I don't have good data to speak to. I think a lot of people saw it as a pandemic opportunity that then is going to fade. But the silly thing is, for me, we had, I don't know how many we had. It was about 60 or 65,000 customers pre-pandemic. And some of them have been customers longer than I've been a team member. And I've been a full-time team member for a decade. Like we have some customers that have been with us for 11 years, And so this idea, and that's what I mean by it belongs in the mix. And so certainly some people came to it or identified the opportunity because of the pandemic. It will stick for some of them, and some of them will certainly kind of retreat a little bit, feeling like, well, I can see people again, but like none of us has the time to get in front of the people who matter most to our success in person as often as we need and want to. Likewise, we don't even have time to have phone calls with these people, much less get in the car or get on a train or get on a plane to go see them. And so this really does have a role to play to fill those gaps in. And so it's pre-pandemic value. It's mid-pandemic value. It's hopefully we're on the retreating side of this post-pandemic value. So there's all of that. And to your point, I really love your observation about sales. Obviously a fun line has always been marketers ruin everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they do, but I think, or they can, and very often they do. I would also say though, especially with a lot of the sales automation that's come out, salespeople can ruin everything too. And so, I do feel like when I look at the three main reasons this movement hasn't gone faster in the decade that I've been involved in it, but like specifically, certainly video prospecting is one of the three that I would point to. The single biggest one by far is human vulnerability, discomfort in a new skill, in a new motion. Am I doing this right? And so much more intimate and personal. It's got a lot of ego attached to it. I don't mean that in kind of like an overblown ego kind of way. I just mean like it has a lot to do with our self-identity, self-acceptance, self-confidence. It's a new skill. So just like a salesperson sucked on their first phone call or maybe their first sales presentation, but they had to do it, they can just, get better and better and better. And now all of a sudden, a couple of years in and, several reps in, they're like, I'm great at this. I love this. This is a really good strength of mine. Video messaging can be the same thing, but out of the gate, people are like, I don't like how I look. I don't like how I sound. I don't know if I'm doing it right. I said too many times, all these reasons. So human vulnerability is the biggest problem. I kind of already shared another one in there, which is kind of just this behavior change. I think about it as like a VP sales or CRO or, somebody else that's responsible perhaps for implementing this in a team, even if it's a BDR, SDR manager of a team of 15, they might look at it and say, well, most of the data I've seen is anecdotal, and it is, but it's real. It doesn't make it any less true. And so why am I going to bother? And certainly the farther up you go, and certainly in a VC-backed environment with average tenure is like 18 months or something in some of these roles, it's like, why would I bother at all? I'm just doing what I can to hold on to this position kind of a thing. And so there's another one is this kind of behavior change piece. But the third one is what we're, kind of around the zone you asked about, which is a lot of people are taking video messaging and playing it for this shallow attention-based game. And anytime we're playing an attention game and we're not valuing the return we're providing on someone's time and attention, two of the most valuable things they can offer us, then we're teaching them that we're not worth their time and attention. And so this is like a double negative. Again, I think it's hurting the video messaging movement overall because a lot of people are taking the same crappy prospecting messages and cadences and scripts and the same poor targeting criteria and the same kind of wide net, see if I can convert 3% and call that a win type of game. And they're doing it in video and it is getting them more attention. And so the interesting thing is now you have people buying or starting freemium accounts because they want to do this prospecting. So the companies are seeing that and reacting. And so you'll see a lot of companies, competitors of ours, positioning it as a video prospecting tool, as a means of getting more attention. And the problem is this is creating a first impression for thousands and thousands and thousands of people that a video message is just a new crappy way to prospect. And I'm not suggesting that all prospecting is crappy. I'm just saying that there's this kind of approach that like, let's just stuff it in a video and see if it makes a difference. And obviously I would say, and BombBomb would say, and human-centered communication and the people that we've engaged in it would say, video messaging isn't about video. It's about your ability to make someone feel a particular way, supported, encouraged, motivated, a fire lit under them, seen, heard, valued, appreciated, all these things that are difficult to do with faceless typed out text. When we put our message into ourselves and communicated through video in a whole complete way, it comes through in a dramatically different way. So can you do video prospecting well? Absolutely you can, but you can also confirm appointments, follow up after appointments, request introductions to other decision makers or influencers, present contracts and proposals and other things, do onboarding, do pre-QBR informational updates so that you don't have to waste time giving a report in person. You can give the report through video in advance and then spend that time together creatively devising what the next 6 to 12 months should look like, with that account. So it's like this true valuable use of time. Same thing on the employee side, recruiting, selecting, onboarding, presenting job offers, all these things you can do with video in a different and better way. And so it really is full cycle value, because anywhere you're sending an email message or a text message or a Slack message or a LinkedIn message is an opportunity to bring it to life a little bit and be more clear and be more personal. So I know I went beyond the nature of your question, but yes, video prospecting, I think, is slowing the movement because a lot of people aren't doing it well. And they're seeing it as the primary or only opportunity.
Yeah, it's the shiny red ball approach in some ways. So like what I heard as you were talking through the analysis there, Ethan, I was thinking through, well, it doesn't matter if you're using a phone for cold calls, which is what we did in the 70s and 80s and some of the 90s, or then it's email, or it's LinkedIn direct messages, or it's text messages. If the core intent, the value or lack of value in those messages is there, right? If I'm bad at doing cold calls because all I do is call people and try to like force them into an appointment, and all I'm doing is taking the same message but moving it into an email format where I'm doing crappy outbound emails. It's just like, do you want to see a demo? Here's my calendar, pick a time. And then I do the same thing on DM, and I do the same thing. It doesn't matter what the next medium is, whether it's phone, email, LinkedIn, or video. If the core intent is wrong or wrongly structured, then that's where the video, it's not going to be effective in the long run. And then it creates the same stigma as all of the other tools that marketing and salespeople have ruined for us.
It's so interesting. So a key word that you use there, and it's super important, is the word intent. So human beings have learned through millennia of evolution and figuring out what works to survive and thrive and to connect and rely on other people for our own survival and to, pass ourselves on through future generations. We've learned to judge intent as the most important thing. Before we judge the true content of a message, we judge the intent of the person delivering it. Another way you'll hear this sometimes is like warmth and competence. People judge warmth before they judge competence. Another way you'll hear this is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. These are all different ways to say the same thing, which is that people judge intent before they judge anything else. And intent includes things like, what is your motivation for reaching out and engaging me? Do you seem to believe the things that you're saying yourself, right? And so we've all seen, for example, that terrible press conference with an athlete or politician or celebrity making this apology for some terrible behavior. And we know the ones that are truly apologetic, like, I can't believe this happened. It'll never happen again. I feel terrible. I apologize to the organization, the fans, and most importantly, this person, that kind of a thing, versus the person that's reading the words that the lawyer gave them, right? They're saying all the right things. From a functional standpoint, it is a competent piece of communication, but it's completely lacking the sincerity that we're looking for to say, is this person in alignment, right? Do they believe what they're saying? Is it do they have my best interests in mind? Should I trust them? All these things are happening automatically. And so that's kind of my primary motivation for, if you are sincere in what you're doing, a video is a great way to communicate your message, especially to the degree that there's an emotional content to it, or an appropriate tone that you're trying to strike that's difficult to capture in text, or some detail or complexity you're trying to advise or guide or describe something to people. These are all great times to go to video, because not only can you demonstrate that competence or truly share your expertise in this kind of like as live manner that people can't, like, if you could just speak extemporaneously for 3 minutes or 5 minutes to address someone's very specific question, kind of in a real flow, in a continuous video message, like this dude knows what he's talking about, or this woman really is an expert on this topic. And underneath all of that, they're never going to say this consciously. She believes what she's saying. She seems to have my best interest in mind. She seems sincere and enthusiastic about it. And she seems motivated in a way that is aligned with my own motivations. And so if you're sincere in what you're doing, there are so many opportunities to make your intent clear, because people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. They don't care about the content of the message as much until they're assured that your intent is a benefit to them. And again, you can think about this like, let's just say 1,000 years ago, if you just proceeded in an opportunity or a situation with someone based on their expertise or their, describing it, and it seems to check all the boxes, but they only had their best interest in mind and not your own, you could very easily be taken advantage of, and the consequences could very potentially be fatal. That's still with us today. The consequences of these things probably aren't fatal, but we're putting ourselves at risk when we proceed without judging someone's intent. So we're very, very good at doing that as human beings subconsciously.
As you were sharing that thought, Ethan, I was going back to a couple of things I highlighted in chapter 2. So chapter 2 of the book is called Human-Centered Communication, which happens to be the title of the book. So 2 of the many sentences I highlighted, one was the platinum rule, which calls for us to treat others as they would like to be treated, as opposed to the golden rule, which is treat others how we would want to be treated. So thinking about them, and what I think is related, you mentioned about every single email you send trains people to open or delete your email. Later on, you talked about no matter how you initially get a person's attention, reward them. And then you talked a little bit about this warmth and confidence topic. And so I was just thinking through this idea that if the intent is there, then almost naturally you have to be thinking of the other person. Because if the intent is not there, that means you're probably more self-centered as opposed to outer-centered. Does that statement make any sense? I'm just like
absolutely.
processing information.
It kind of goes back to the full statement you made around intent, which is that it's the mindset going into it that is going to dramatically affect the outcome. And I should add one more layer to it, and I'd be happy to speak to each of those other ideas too. One of the problems with relying on faceless typed out text is that it is missing the intent data that human beings need and want. And so the problem for us is, and now I'm leaning on the work of Dr. Nick Morgan, whose book I cited a couple of times in Human-Centered Communication. So I'm going to give him full credit for this because I learned it from him. Is that in the absence of that intent data, when we're hoping to connect with someone through faceless typed out text, their brain is scanning for intent. We'll just use that word as a catch-all for all those other ideas I shared in the last passage. In text, it's unless we're amazing writers, it's really difficult to discern this. And so the problem is, in the absence of that data, the brain wants it and it will make it up. It'll just straight make it up. It'll fabricate it. And the problem is it does it in a protective manner that is not to your benefit as the sender, but instead as it's like danger, threat. I don't get the positive signals I need. I'm not so sure about this. And so that's happening in the background. So we need to know that. So one of the reasons, again, that video is so important in that scenario. Platinum rule, love it. It's just to your point, golden rule, we all know it. It's present in basically every single religious and philosophical system. Any human that's ever tried to answer the questions of why are we here and how are we supposed to live has arrived at some version of the golden rule. Platinum rule is this step up. And so this is why CRMs are so important. It's so important to be present and to actively listen. It's so important to take notes, is that the more people share with us and the more homework we do in advance, the more prepared we are to treat people as individual human beings. And truly, there's nothing more gratifying as a human being than to be seen and heard and respected and understood as the unique individual human being who we are. There's so many choices we make, whether it's the clothes we wear, or the cars we drive, or the way we style our hair, the paint colors we put on our wall. All of these things at some degree are an effort for someone to see us as the unique individual that we are. And so the more we can do that for other people, make these observations, ask those really good questions, observe a book on your bookshelf that you maybe recognize and ask about it. The more connected people feel to us, the more validated they feel in themselves. And this is like, it is amazing to me. This is something that's come out of hosting the podcast and just being, constantly in the development of these thoughts and ideas. Is a salesperson plays such an outsized role in the customer experience in general. The human being has so much influence on whether or not the product is going to be bought. Setting price, setting features, setting benefits off to the side. I've done this, and I would expect you have too, Scott. We've made a purchase of a perhaps more expensive product, or perhaps an inferior product, or a product that wasn't actually a perfect fit for our needs, because we either really liked the person representing the other brand or product or service, or we very much disliked the person who represented the product that maybe would have been the better fit. Perhaps we didn't even find out it was the better fit because we didn't like that person because of how they made us feel. How did they make us feel about ourselves? How did they make us feel about our problem? How did they make us feel about our opportunity, et cetera? And so, anyway, platinum rule, the more we can make people feel validated and treat them in the way they prefer. This includes, how do they prefer to be communicated with? Some people are going to say, gosh, or you're going to observe, because you're, looking at the tracking, they're not watching your video all the way through. If you sent a couple of videos and they're not watching it all the way through, maybe they do prefer a little bullet point list, and you're going to get those rich, detailed, nuanced pieces of communication delivered on a live video call or in person, or perhaps over the phone. They don't want to do it asynchronously, whatever. So it's honoring people in all the ways that we can. And the machines around us have so much information that can help us make those decisions better. Last one, because it's such a good one, an important one, I should say. Every message you're sending trains people to open or delete your next message. This goes back to this return on time and attention concept. And we're fooling ourselves if we think that we can keep doing these things over and over, and it's just going to all turn around magically for us. So we send 3 emails. They opened one, didn't open the other 2, and didn't reply to any of them. We've effectively trained that person that we are not worth their time and attention. And so our name, our email address, our brand name is all in their mind. Humans are pattern making machines. In their minds, they've already built this pattern recognition that this person is not worth my time and attention. So we all have that, perhaps maybe we signed up for it, maybe we didn't, but it's on our phones, and swipe, delete, swipe, delete, swipe, delete. So there are people that send me emails, or companies that send me emails once a week, or every couple of days, or every day, and it's swipe, delete. And then one day I'll finally say, all right, screw this. I'm going to go in and I'm going to unsubscribe from all these things. Or if I've unsubscribed and it keeps coming, then I'll just mark it as an abuse complaint. So humans are recognizing this. And so we need to value people's time and attention in order to earn the right to their attention in the future. So we need to validate it with useful, valuable, interesting content that sees them as much as possible for the unique individual human being that they are. And in that way, we're getting into this positive trust cycle where, Scott, when you email me, there's not a chance I'm not going to open that email and read that email, right? Scott is a very positive pattern in my mind. And so, whereas other people, it's like, I don't really maybe recognize them. I'll get to that later, kind of a thing. And so we want to be on that fast track with people where it's like, I'm going to look at this, I'm going to read it, I'm going to respond because I have a positive pattern in the background. Other key thing right now, machines are obviously tracking everything that we do. And so in the face of ever increasing digital noise and pollution, machines are going to control more and more of what actually gets in front of us. We can recognize this now very easily as, Scott, we could both be connected to the exact same 5,000 people on LinkedIn. We refresh our feeds simultaneously, but our feeds are going to be different based on whose stuff we've liked and commented on. And so it's trying to give us things that they think will, or the algorithm thinks will be rewarding to us based on how we've behaved in the past. What have we devoted our time and attention to? What have we dwelled on? What video clips have we watched and how long? Who are they from? Did we like? Did we comment? How often did we comment? Did we comment back and forth perpetually? Likewise, we've all made that new LinkedIn connection. We didn't engage with them. And after 2 weeks, maybe they put some of their stuff in our feed a couple of times. And if we don't engage with it, basically they disappear after a week or two. And it's like we never connected at all. And so that experience is coming to more and more of our digital, interaction points, inboxes, social messaging, obviously social feeds, et cetera. And so we need to be much more conscious today how we're rewarding people for their time and attention, because we're going to disappear from people if we don't.
All right, folks, we are off and running in my conversation with Ethan Beute. A lot of what we're talking about here is video and the use of video and how you can be using video as a way to connect with your audience, to connect with your investors, your prospects, your own team. And so one of the things we do via video quite often are our live trainings. We do a number of masterclasses, live trainings, work sessions, all of which are either low cost or no cost to you if you're a B2B tech startup founder. Would love to share with you all of the schedule that we have coming up. One of the commitments that we have made is to do as many of these as possible. We're sometimes scheduling 2 or 3 of these per month. Again, these are completely free in most cases. And everything we do here is designed to teach early stage B2B startup tech founders on how to ramp up and scale up their sales process. So absolutely encourage you to join us on any of the upcoming live events. The best way to find out that calendar and see what's upcoming is go over to salesqualia, Qualia.com, salesqualia.com. Right there on the homepage. On the top navigation bar, there's an area that says live events. Check that out. You'll see everything that we've got coming up for you to check out. You can also add yourself to our email list, or if you've yet to download a free copy of my best-selling book, Stop Hustling, Start Scaling, you can also do that over at salesqualia.com. So no shortage of opportunities for you to learn from us and learn from me here at Sales Qualia. So get yourself signed up for a live event, download the book, or add yourself to our email list. All right, that's it for now. Let's head back to my conversation with Ethan. What I'd like to do, Ethan, is go back to something you talked about at the very start of our conversation, which is something related to ego. As a person, as a salesperson, as a human, we, at least from a selling standpoint, a lot of people don't use video, maybe because they're worried that it doesn't look good or there's going to be too many ums or ers. They don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to put themselves out there. Same with the people selling you a 6-figure deal. For whatever reason, they don't want to bring themselves on camera. I totally agree. That seems odd. Part of me, when you said that, I was thinking to myself, well, what about all the videos that people post on Facebook? What about TikTok, Instagram? Like all of the selfies that people are taking all of the time. There seems to be a little bit of like two sides. People are saying, well, on the one hand, I have no problem taking a selfie and posting on Instagram about me surfing at the beach or hanging out with my friends. When it comes to doing something that could more arguably create value to the world, which is I want to get in, make sure this person saw my email and my follow-up because we could really help them. All of a sudden we're like frozen by the red light of the camera. Like, am I thinking about that in at least directionally, that there's this, people are thinking about this 2 different ways?
Yeah, I think about it a lot of different ways. I think someone that is posting video on social is probably more likely to be more comfortable more quickly in this format because they're recording videos and putting them out for people to see. I do think that there is a little bit of a change when I'm sending one video specifically to my boss or to my CEO or to our board or to someone that is on the other side of a 6-figure deal or a 7-figure deal. Like it starts to feel a little bit more personal and consequential. But I do think someone that's posting on social is probably more likely to take to it more quickly than someone that isn't doing video, except maybe showing up on Zoom calls. The interesting thing, though, is I think there's a potentially a negative effect on video messaging relative to social videos. And by that, I mean, I've heard it a bunch of times. People are like, oh, no one wants those. It's like TikTok, but in my inbox. I'm like, it's not. It isn't that. But like someone who wants an excuse not to participate, I've heard that excuse in the form of, oh, that's like all that, these people that are just kind of showing off on social media kind of a thing. As a reason why they don't want to participate. I do ultimately think that it's about them in 2 ways. One is a lack of clarity on the real value, benefit, and appropriate use of a video message in a business context. I think that is something that is still being normalized. And as I said earlier, I think the patterns being developed around it aren't necessarily completely positive. And there are ways to improve that. And then this other thing is that it starts to look like it's a show off thing. And so I'm not going to do that because underneath all of it, I don't feel confident that I can show off on video, right? Like that's for other people that are confident to do surfing videos or to do dog trick videos or to do live videos on the way into the donut shop in the morning or whatever they're doing. So I've seen it used as an excuse not to participate as well.
Okay. So let's think about two groups of people and looking for some tactical advice. Let's take one group of people that might be doing some video for business purposes, not just like I'm on camera for Zoom, but I'm sending a individual personalized email. I'm opening up BombBomb. I'm sending it out to a prospect I just had a call with. Maybe they're doing it sporadically, or they'll do it in spurts or do it on occasion. So that's one group. The other group are the people that keep hearing about video and they haven't yet done it, even though they know they should or they would like to, but they're scared to do it. For the first group, what would be 3 suggestions you would make to help that person improve what they're doing? And for the person who is, I know I should try it, but I'm just gun shy about actually clicking the record button and sending it, what would be 3 suggestions for that person to overcome whatever mental barriers they might have around this?
Cool. Great question. I love the way you structured it. So I'll say to the person that's doing it now and then, this is very common. And I hear it all the time. I've seen it in NPS. Awesome. Of course.
Me too.
And I've heard it like back when I was going to a lot of events and trade shows and conferences in person, I would hear it all the time in like casual conversation with people. And it's at some level, it's a confessional. It's like, gosh, whenever I send out videos, I make money, but I haven't done it in like 3 months, that kind of thing. Like, well, and so that it begs like, so I guess I'll make this the first one. Yeah, I didn't intend to initially, but I'm right here at the doorstep. Take a look at the other activities. And if you've ever felt that way, gosh, I get great responses when I send videos, but I haven't done it in X amount of time. What are the other activities that you're doing? And are they as effective? And is it worth potentially time blocking or switching out or saying, gosh, instead of picking up the phone when this happens, I'm going to send a video, or instead of going to the keyboard when this happens, I'm going to send a video. So that would be one. It's like evaluating. I guess I'll broaden it out and say, evaluate your mix of how you're communicating digitally and asynchronously. And am I using video at opportune times? So that's one. Tied onto that, but I guess is the second idea is find one trigger point and do that very, very consistently. 1 or 2. You offered a fantastic one, by the way. It's one of my very favorite videos. After you get off a call with a prospect or even with a customer, you're typically doing something like maybe a bullet point follow-up to say, hey, these were some of the key ideas and here's the next step. Do that in a video for a variety of reasons, including meeting them where they are, making sure that they know, again, going back to this intent piece, making sure that they know you understand them and that you have a plan to help them move forward to overcome their problem or to take advantage of the opportunity. Because, and it might be they came out of desperation or fear and things are like on fire and I need your help right away. That's a different kind of tone to your video than things are pretty awesome, but I got your name and I want to make them even better. Right. So the video is going to feel different, but you're still going to hit some of the same bullet points and cast the next step. So that's a great use case. Make a commitment to yourself. Every time I get off the phone with a prospect or customer, I'm going to do a short video follow-up that hits the key salient points, that uses some of their language back to them, especially someone you just met. Like if they keep using a little like inside terms that are specific to their company or their industry that maybe you wouldn't normally use, be sure to incorporate those, these types of things. So whether it's when you set a meeting, when you get a new online lead, when you get someone referred to you, after a phone call, when you're presenting a contract or proposal, whatever your trigger point is, make a commitment to do it very consistently. And then what's going to happen is you're going to recognize the benefit. You're going to get more comfortable. That's going to be a more natural motion for you, a more consistent part of your day. And then you'll find other use cases. Another great one, by the way. So I just mentioned triggered events. So I guess I'll make this the third one, even though it kind of is a related point, not a separate one. So I mentioned a trigger point. When this happens, I'm going to respond with a video message, or I'm going to record a new video message, or I'm going to pull a video out of my library and send that video to that person. That could be, I already gave you a few use cases. One more is a question from a prospect or customer that instead of typing out a 4-paragraph response, you're going to miss some steps, you're going to drop some links in, and it's going to look like a homework assignment to them. Speak to them directly. You're going to be, their friend, their trusted advisor, whatever situation you're going to be in there. You're going to answer their question that way. So whatever your 1 or 2 or 3 trigger points are, make a commitment on those. Another way to do it, of course, is to time block and to do things proactively. So there's no trigger to reaching out to all your non-responsive leads over the past week, but every Thursday afternoon from 2 to 3 p.m., you're going to go look at all the non-responsive leads or open opportunities, people that haven't followed up yet or never responded or said they were going to respond but haven't. You're going to have some devised system there, and you're just going to send short video messages to put yourself back in front of them, to reintroduce yourself, to talk about where you left off with the conversation, to invite them back into the next step, whatever that might be. So you could either do it as a reactive trigger response scenario, or you could do it as a proactive time blocking. I'm going to use video in this way. So I'll call that 3.
Yeah.
It's about consistency and building off one to the next. Now it's something I do normally as a mix with my phone calls and emails and LinkedIn messages and all these other things. To the person that isn't,
if I may,
yes, please.
On that point, the thing I like about that approach, Ethan, is I think, like anything, whether it's trying to lose 20 pounds or trying to start doing video, there's this tendency of, I got to do it all. If you want to lose 20 pounds, I got to join the gym, I got to change my diet, I got to change my sleep, I got to. There's and what ends up happening is there's overwhelm, and then it becomes too hard, and then you just decide, well, I'll start my diet next month. If instead, if you talk to a really good personal trainer or nutritionist, what they'll say is, look, if you want to lose 20 pounds, let's just do, for this week, let's focus on 3 things. Let's drink a lot of water. Okay. Let's avoid white food like bread and pasta and sugar for a week. And let's just find 3 20-minute times in your calendar where you can just go for a walk. Let's do that for a week. And let's see how that goes. Because you're setting yourself up to win. So this approach, which is it's really simple. I'm going to find one little spot in my process. And the one post prospect, I think, is the easiest one, because you don't even have to come up with anything to say. You've got all the notes that the prospect has written your script for you. If all you do is parrot it back to them, what I heard you say was this and this and this, and we're going to do our follow-up call next Tuesday with you and Sarah. So if you have any questions in the meantime, let me know. You're just saying what they told you 30 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So it seems like the easiest thing. So you do that and you're like, okay, this makes sense. And then you can go into other avenues where it might feel a little riskier or higher stakes.
Yeah, love it. Great observation. Another pro tip on that video, because I love that use case so much, is if they had any objections, certainly address those. I assume you addressed them in the call a little bit, or, kind of spoke to them, or concerns or whatever. I don't necessarily like objections per se, but, anything that concerned them and you spoke to in the meeting, double down on that again and let them know that you have solutions or, ways around that, or you can help them out through that, or it actually isn't an objection at all, whatever the case may be. And the other benefit of doing that then is you've given them something they can easily forward to somebody else who wasn't in the meeting, because they either couldn't make it, or because you don't even know that they're an influencer or decision maker in the process. And so now you get to present the whole case yourself, using their language, using their specific situation, leveraging your expertise to do so. And now they feel like they know you before they've met you. You don't have to rely on the person who was in the meeting to carry it all forward. And so anyway, to the person who thinks, okay, this is interesting, but I would say first and foremost, every one of these, don't try a DIY solution. It's just too many steps. That's why companies like BombBomb and all of our competitors exist. They all have a freemium product or a free trial. I do not recommend freemium in the long term, because if something is free, ultimately you're the product. So I could go down that road if we want to, but I really think try it out free. And when you start, don't necessarily put yourself in the challenging situation of reaching out to people with like significant consequences. For example, this prospecting video we've been talking about, don't necessarily start there. Start with something easy. So one is sign up for something, whether you're paying or not yet paying, sign up for something and make a commitment to spend 10 minutes a day doing what I'm about to describe. And I'm going to call this step 2. Step 2 is I do it usually on a written list. I keep a notebook at hand and I'll write down if I see someone on social, I might comment, but I might also write their name down. If a frontline team member's name comes up in an executive meeting that I'm in, like so let's say a customer care associate on our team or a BDR comes up in a meeting because they're going through something difficult or they overcame something really important, or we had someone promoted from BDR to AE, just closed her first deal. It's a good 15-seat deal, like awesome, good for her. Heard her name come up in a meeting, write it down. And then periodically I'll just find 15 minutes and just cross. And I'll just send personal videos to these people. Hey man, saw your post on LinkedIn. I know I commented. I just want to let you know, I'm just so excited for you. It reminds me of, back in 2012 when you and I were talking about blah, blah, blah. And here it is today. And it's just so like, man, I'm just so excited for you. Things you can't do in a LinkedIn comment, right? Same thing. Hey, I just want to let you know, I heard about what's going on. I've got a couple ideas for you. I won't offer them unsolicited. I just want to let you know I'm thinking about you. And if you do want to talk about this situation, I'm here to help you, right? So the concern, interest, whatever. So there, thank you. Good job. Congratulations. I've been thinking about you. I was excited to hear. I was sorry to hear. These kind of lightweight personal messages with people you know and who know you in kind of a non-threatening situation. It could be to your friend. It could be to your spouse. It could be to your mom. It could be to like anybody you know. Simple personal video messages in kind of a lower threat scenario is a great way to get comfortable with the software, to get comfortable. Like, how do I get in and out of these videos? Most of us now know because of Zoom, like how to position ourselves on camera. We've thought about our space. Some of those boxes are already checked. I think that is an advantage to the movement in general. So start there. And again, make a commitment to, like our free trial is 2 weeks long. So make a commitment to block 10 minutes a few times a week. And in that time, you'll send 10 or 15 videos total. And the first day you might only get 1 out the door. The next time you'll get 2 or 3. The next time you'll get 3 or 4. And the next time you'll get 5 or 6, because it gets faster and easier. And what's going to happen is you're going to get replies and responses that validate that this is in fact a different and better way to communicate. That it is a really nice touch. Instead of clicking the one touch happy birthday button on LinkedIn, you record a video message for someone that's fine for the people you don't really know that well, but for the people that you really want to value and appreciate because they're so meaningful to you, or perhaps even just to get transactionally minded, they're really valuable to your business. You see they got the job promotion. Don't just click the generic button that says congratulations on the new job. Record a video for them, like simple things like this. And it'll validate that, again, this is different and better. And then at that point, make a commitment to a paid service where you get more control over what the video playback experience looks like. It's more branded to you. You get better insights and analytics, et cetera. And then I guess the third step, I'll call that a big number 2 mixed into number 1 there. And then the third one is, again, find your initial 1 or 2 use cases. Whether that's a trigger point that you were in reaction to something that happens, you're always going to send a video. And by the way, it doesn't necessarily have to be a truly personal video, although it's typically best. It could be an evergreen video. You could have a new lead response evergreen video for the 3 main sources of your leads. If let's say you're paying for, you're doing a pay-per-lead scenario with this particular site or platform. You've got a couple lead magnets or, whatever, like lead generation things on your own website. And you've got a response to a paid ad campaign that's like a short funnel scenario, like whatever. You can record separate videos that thank someone for engaging with you through that channel. It could be a referral one too, although in a referral situation, I would always do that personally because you want to validate that you are the awesome person this other person said you were. And you want to also send a thank you video to that other person too. So, for some of your more generic lead sources, you could have 1 or 2 or 3 in the can. And the goal is just to separate yourself from other competitors whose wet forms they might be filling out. Or like in some cases, I know there are a lot of people that are doing pay-per-lead type scenarios where this one lead is actually a lead for 4 people, not for one. How do you differentiate yourself? How do you humanize the experience? And because of the way you can see that an email got opened, you can see that a link got clicked, although I would say the email open is under threat by some of the Apple security stuff. The video play is something that any competent service should be able to tell you. When did it get played and how much of it got watched? And so that can then qualify some of these lead sources as well. And so anyway, you can record a video once, use it over and over again. I like a personal video in most cases. Regardless, find the 1 or 2 trigger points that you're going to do in a reaction, and commit to those, kind of as we were talking about for person style 1. And this, now we're talking about person style 2 that isn't doing any video, or create some of those time blocks. Anywhere there's confusion, frustration, slowness in your funnel, pre-sale or post-sale, is a great opportunity to iron that out by communicating in a more personal, clear, and human way. And so there are so many video use cases. And by the way, for folks who are listening this deep into the conversation, I would assume you're pretty interested in this topic. So thank you for that. But you could email me directly, Ethan, ETHAN @bombbomb.com. And I will send you a guide that I wrote between the 2 books that has a full funnel, pre-sale to post-sale, and maps, I think it's like 62 video use cases to that funnel. So you can maybe find a couple of these spots for yourself to proactively or reactively start mixing in some evergreen or truly personal videos.
I love that. I was going to say, I think that's a pretty good spot to wrap up. You covered a lot of the psychological behavioral reasons around video. We talked about intent versus competency, and then obviously finishing up with some tactical tips. I really, really, really appreciate your expertise on this, Ethan. For those folks who haven't gotten a copy of the book, Human-Centered Communication, it's absolutely worth it. So make sure you pick up a copy. Ethan is very accessible. As you can probably tell, he just gave out his email address. He's on LinkedIn. You can find his videos, and he's just a really good person that would be happy to help you in any way. So take advantage of his offer for the guide, and also reach out to him, because knowing you, I know that if you don't have the answer to the question, you will do everything you can to get that person in the direction of an answer, or to the right person who can answer that question. So
I appreciate that observation. It's absolutely true. I prefer, again, this is such a benefit to almost anyone working in a professional capacity. I prefer that people use BombBomb, but I just want this thing to grow. I want this to be normalized behavior. I think we'll have better lives and businesses. And I'm happy to help anyone in any way that makes sense.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for carving out the time. Congratulations on the book success. I hope you 10x it over the next year, get more people reading what you covered. I mean, we scratched the surface. Like, we covered like 2 pages of the book in this conversation.
And we covered a bit of Rehumanize as well. I mean, a lot of that psychology, we do kind of plus it up a little bit and add some new information. And we're inspired by new and different people and some of the psychology that's in human-centered communication, but there's a lot of it anchored in Rehumanize as well. Yeah.
And you mentioned some of the other folks that were involved with each chapter has a different person that's featured. And some of these people I know very well, like Lauren Bailey. She's been a guest on this podcast. Morgan Ingram is a real star and somebody to be following on LinkedIn. So you're not just learning from Ethan and his co-author, Stephen, but you're going to be learning from, I think it's 10 or 11 other people that really know their stuff when it comes to human-centered communication. So it's quite a handbook. And so thanks for taking the time to write it. Having written 3 books, it's a labor of love. Regardless of how successful the book is, it's always 5, 6, 7 times harder and longer to get the manuscript done. And that's just the starting point. So
totally. I find it easier to write the book than to sell the book.
Yeah. I'm good at first drafts, but then it's, you mentioned about colors in a room. I just painted my office here. So purple's my favorite color. So it's a great way to
express. And I could tell that. I mean, that's even that sign off to the side of you. It's clear.
I appreciate that. All right, folks, that's a wrap. I really love conversations with Ian. He's such a smart guy, and love his approach and how thoughtful he is when it comes not just to human-centered communication, but everything that he does in business. Listen, if you've reached this far in the podcast, tells me you're probably digging the content. You probably enjoyed this conversation. So I would really appreciate if you do just a couple of things. Number one is go over to wherever podcast platform you're listening to this, whether it's Apple Podcasts or somewhere else. Leave us a review. Let us know what you like about the show. Let other people know what you like about the show. that helps others just like you find the show, why they should listen. And if you've got some guest ideas, topics, any suggestions for the show, make sure that we know about that as well. Secondly, I would love for you to subscribe to the podcast if you're not already. You might be already subscribing, which is why you're listening to this podcast. But if you're relatively new, or maybe this is a podcast episode you came across on LinkedIn or some other place, then go ahead and subscribe. We're pumping out the new episodes every single week. We've got a full calendar of guests, just like Ethan and others in the tech world. So you absolutely don't want to miss any episodes. So make sure you subscribe. And of course, if you are a longtime listener, or if you've just been listening to a couple of episodes and you're really loving what we're doing, please share this. Tell a friend or 10, we like to say. Viral is absolutely the best way to get the word out about the podcast. So we love to spread the word by word of mouth, meaning your mouth. So if you could let other people know about the show, we would certainly appreciate it. All right, that's it for now. This is a wrap on this episode of the Startup Selling Show, Talking Sales with Ethan Beute. We'll catch you on the next episode. See ya.